Coming October 15th on the Whimsy Farm podcast, I'll spend an hour with independent investigative journalist Antonia Juhasz. She focuses on energy, climate change, and environmental justice. We'll discuss her new article in Rolling Stone, Inside the Fight Against Trump's Alaskan Pipe Dream.
Basically what did happen at the summit, which was rather short, negotiations took place that could further facilitate large US oil companies' potential return to Russia, which is something both they and the Russians greatly want, and to further lock in potential Russian dominance over Ukraine's fossil fuel and other natural resources. Putin entered first. He led the press conference. Of course, he was speaking in Russian, and we had simultaneous translation as the press there. But if you were just watching it, the vast majority of the press conference was in Russian because Putin spoke first. He dominated almost the entire press conference. And then he introduced Trump, who spoke for a short period of time, and mostly talked about his great friendship with Putin. There was certainly an advance made on these fossil fuel negotiations, both for the future of Ukraine's fossil fuels and also the future of bringing Russia back into the broader commercial market that it wants to be in to feed its war machine, which is to be able to sell its oil and gas and to bring US companies back in. I'll just say Alaska, and particularly the Alaskan Arctic, is warming at rates of almost 4 times the rest of the world's warming rates. And Alaska is itself more broadly is warming at rates of 2 to 3 times the rest of the world. Global warming is, of course, the outcome primarily of the burning and use of fossil fuels, leading to global warming, leading to the climate crisis. Alaska's rapid warming rate is also leading its glaciers to melt faster than in any other place in the world. What would be the largest fossil fuel infrastructure project in the entire country, which is an 800-mile long pipeline from the tip of Alaska down to the bottom of Alaska to move gas from the top of the Alaskan Arctic down to past Anchorage to a little community of Nikiski, where I also visited off the Cook Inlet, and to build a massive new a facility that cools that gas to prepare it for export and then export it out to Asia. So a massive new, what's called liquefied natural gas facility. All of this is to lock Alaska and the nation further into fossil fuels, while also subsequent laws and actions the Trump administration have taken, of course, are to aggressively kneecap or undo any financial commitments the federal government has made to renewable energy. It's not just environmental groups that are opposing the pipeline. There certainly are environmental groups that are opposing the pipeline, but they're not alone. They're in coalition with groups that are concerned about their pocketbooks, the economy, the politics of it. Profits are dependent upon a continuation of that production. And if you build this $70 billion project that is an oil pipeline and the export facility and a terminal, you have a lot of money invested in making sure that that gas keeps flowing. I've reported on oil and gas development in Louisiana, and I've seen in Louisiana what these mammoth liquefied natural gas operations look like. And it's hard to describe it. It's even hard to realize when you look at it in pictures what it's like until you're in front of them. I've been reporting on oil and gas issues for decades, and I've seen operations all over the world. And there's nothing that compares to the scale of these operations. That security, of course, for those who are particularly concerned about the climate crisis in Alaska, which is causing fires, floods, eliminating for many food security, water security. They are arguing that Alaska has a constitution that says you can't put fossil fuels first, that we are suffering extreme consequences of the climate crisis already. And they're only going to get worse. And there is a solution. The guardrails, while there are this time, the difference with this Trump administration versus the previous Trump administration is that the internal guardrails are no longer there, but the guardrails from outside are still there. And we're still there. The journalists are still there. The advocates and activists are still there. The people who just care enough to show up are still there. The lawyers are still there. The judges are still there. And that work of engagement, what I really appreciated from those that I interviewed in Alaska, was they were saying the work that they're doing is strengthening ties between communities that wouldn't otherwise necessarily, would often be seen as adversaries, labor and environmentalists, Native communities and non-Native communities, people who are seen on the right and people who are seen on the left, who are coming together. And that organizing is creating a sense of community at the same time as Trump is working so aggressively to make us only see division.
Join me on October 15th when I welcome journalist Antonia Juhasz to the Whimsy Farm podcast.
whimsyfarms.net